Sometimes we have everything mapped out in our lives. We set our goals, we make our plans, and we have an idea of how it's all going to unfold. But then life happens and things don't go the way we envisioned. We face unexpected challenges, doors that seem like a sure thing suddenly close, or a long-held dream doesn't come to pass. In these moments, it's natural to feel disappointed, even frustrated. But when we look at things through the lens of faith, we realize that these setbacks aren't the end of our story. They're part of God's bigger, better plan for us. You see, trusting God's plan over our own means understanding that He sees the whole picture. Where we see a snapshot, He sees the entire landscape of our lives. Where we see a momentary delay, He sees divine timing. Maybe that opportunity didn't work out because He has something even greater on the horizon. Maybe that relationship ended because He's preparing you for someone who will support your purpose in a way that only He knows. When we let go of our limited vision and start to trust His infinite wisdom, we open ourselves up to blessings that are far greater than anything we could ever imagine. The truth is, we often get too focused on the how and when we think, how is this going to work out, or when will I see the answer to my prayers? But God isn't asking us to figure out the details. He's asking us to trust that He has it all worked out. When we try to force our plans or insist on our timing, we may miss out on the incredible things He has in store. But when we surrender our plans to Him, we allow His perfect plan to unfold in ways that bring us true joy, purpose, and fulfillment. In the book of Proverbs, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This verse reminds us that we're not meant to understand every twist and turn. We're simply called to trust. Trust doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. It means we do our best and then let God handle the rest. It means we make plans, but we hold them loosely, understanding that God may have something different, even better in mind. Think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph had dreams and plans, but his life took a completely different direction. He was betrayed, sold into slavery, and falsely accused. It seemed like his dreams were shattered. Yet through all those trials, God was working behind the scenes. Each setback was actually a setup for something greater. Eventually, Joseph's story didn't just fulfill his dreams, but allowed him to be a blessing to others. Joseph's life teaches us that God's plan often involves going through things that we don't understand at the time, but that ultimately lead us to something greater. If you're going through a season where things aren't working out the way you planned, remember that God's plan is always for your good. He says in Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. When you feel like giving up, hold on to that promise. God doesn't just see where you are, He sees where you're going. He knows how each piece fits together, and He's preparing you for the place He has prepared for you. God's plan may lead you down paths that seem unfamiliar or even challenging, but those are often the very paths that shape you, prepare you, and bring you closer to the dreams He has placed within your heart. And when you look back, you'll see that the places where you thought you were off course were actually the very places that brought you closer to your destiny. So today, let go of the need to control every outcome. Release the idea that everything has to go according to your plan. Take a step of faith, knowing that God's ways are higher than our ways and His plans are better than our plans. Trust that He is guiding your steps and that what may look like a setback is actually a setup for something greater. With God, your life is in capable hands, and His plan will always lead you to a place of peace, purpose, and blessings beyond anything you could have orchestrated on your own. In life, we all have dreams, goals, and visions of where we want to be. When we pray, work hard, and put in the effort, we often expect things to fall into place right away. But what happens when there's a delay? When the answer doesn't come in the timing we hope for, it's easy to feel discouraged and to start doubting. In those moments, we need to remember that God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't match our own. A delay is not a denial. It's simply a part of His plan to prepare us for what's ahead. Think about a seed planted in the ground. Just because we can't see it growing doesn't mean nothing's happening. Underneath the surface, the seed is taking root, gathering nutrients, and getting stronger. When it's finally ready to break through, it blossoms into what it was meant to be. Our lives work in much the same way. Sometimes God has us in a season of waiting because He's preparing us, strengthening us, and setting things in motion behind the scenes. Just because we don't see immediate progress doesn't mean progress isn't being made. One reason for delays in our lives is that God wants to develop our patience and strengthen our character. Waiting can feel uncomfortable, but it's often in the waiting that we learn valuable lessons about perseverance, gratitude, and humility. These qualities prepare us for the blessings He has in store. When we are patient in the delay, we show God that we trust Him, and that trust becomes the foundation for all the blessings that are to come. Another purpose of delay is to build our faith. Faith isn't really faith if we have all the answers, if we can see exactly how everything is going to work out. True faith is believing in what we cannot yet see, trusting that God's promises will come to pass even when the evidence isn't there yet. When we face delays, we have an opportunity to grow our faith by leaning into His promises and reminding ourselves that He is faithful. Faith that has been tested and strengthened in the delay will become unshakable, equipping us to handle the blessings He's preparing. It's also important to remember that while we're waiting, God is often aligning people, circumstances, and events to work out in our favor. Sometimes the delay isn't just about us, it's about preparing the right opportunity, opening doors that are currently closed, or bringing the right people into our lives at the perfect time. When we look back on our lives, we can often see how delays led us to something far better than we would have imagined on our own. A delayed job opportunity might lead to a position where we'll thrive, a postponed plan might keep us safe, or a waiting period might allow us to meet people who will enrich our lives. The Bible tells us, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him, Psalm 37:7. When we feel anxious in the delay, we can take this as a reminder to rest in God's timing, to trust that He's working things out on our behalf, and to find peace in His promises. Instead of becoming frustrated, we can use this time to deepen our relationship with God, to grow in our faith, and to prepare ourselves mentally and spiritually for the blessings He's bringing our way. Think of it this way, a delay isn't a period of inactivity, it's an opportunity for growth and preparation. Imagine if a baker took bread out of the oven before it was fully baked, it wouldn't be ready. In the same way, God doesn't want to deliver blessings to us prematurely. He waits until we are ready, until the timing is just right, so that we can fully enjoy and steward the blessings He has for us. So, if you're in a season of delay right now, don't be discouraged. God has not forgotten you. This delay is not a no, it's a not yet. He is preparing you for something greater. And He's preparing the blessings He has in store. Hold on to that truth, be patient, and keep moving forward in faith. Know that when God's timing aligns with your readiness, you'll step into the blessings with a heart that's fully prepared, with faith that's strong, and with a spirit that's full of gratitude. Trust that His timing is perfect, and let that trust carry you through this season of waiting. Remember, God's delays are never His denials. They are simply moments for us to deepen our trust, to grow in patience, and to prepare our hearts for the abundant blessings that are coming our way. In life, we all have a plan, a path we think will take us to where we want to go. We envision how things will unfold step by step and believe that as long as we stick to that plan, success will come. But sometimes life has a way of surprising us. We find ourselves on an unexpected path, a detour we didn't anticipate, and it can feel confusing or even disappointing. But these unexpected paths often lead us closer to our true purpose, shaping us in ways we couldn't have predicted and preparing us for something even greater than we'd imagined. You see, God doesn't always work according to our plans. His vision for our lives is bigger, more profound, and sometimes beyond our immediate understanding. When we're faced with an unexpected path, it can be hard to see how it could possibly be for our good. But when we trust that God is guiding our steps, even in the detours, we open ourselves up to blessings that align with His perfect plan. Think about the story of Moses in the Bible. Moses was raised as an Egyptian prince with a life of luxury and privilege. But one day he found himself on a very different path. Forced to flee Egypt after defending a fellow Hebrew, Moses ended up in the wilderness, far from the life he knew. For 40 years, he lived as a shepherd in Midian, a life that seemed ordinary compared to his royal upbringing. It might have seemed like his purpose had been lost. But in that time, Moses was being prepared for something extraordinary. God used those years in the wilderness to shape him, to teach him patience, resilience, and humility. When the time was right, God called Moses to lead His people out of Egypt. That unexpected path had been a critical part of Moses' journey to fulfilling his true purpose. In our own lives, we may experience setbacks, career changes, unexpected moves, or relationships that end, and it's easy to wonder, why did this happen? This isn't what I planned, but often These moments are part of a divine detour, a way for God to prepare us for a purpose we haven't yet seen. Sometimes the path we thought was right would have kept us from fully stepping into the calling He has for us. And it's only through these unexpected twists that we're able to grow, to learn, and to develop the strength we'll need for what lies ahead. Sometimes an unexpected path might take us through seasons that feel lonely or challenging, but in these times, God often does His most transformative work. It's in the seasons of solitude that we learn to rely on Him, to listen to His voice, and to find our true identity. We're not distracted by the noise of the world, and we have an opportunity to deepen our relationship with God, to understand who we are in Him, and to embrace the purpose He has placed within us. In Isaiah 55:8-9, it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This verse is a reminder that God's ways may not always make sense to us, but they are always higher, always wiser, and always in our best interest. When we're led down an unexpected path, it's often because God is directing us towards something that will bring us closer to Him and to the purpose He has for our lives. An unexpected path might also be God's way of redirecting us from something that would ultimately be harmful. We may not understand it at the time, but looking back, we often realize that what we thought was a setback was actually a setup for something far greater. Perhaps that closed door saved us from a situation that wasn't right, or that lost opportunity made room for something far more fulfilling. When we embrace these unexpected paths with faith, we allow God to work in us and through us. Instead of focusing on what could have been, we can choose to focus on what God is doing right now, trusting that He is leading us exactly where we need to be. And when we reach the end of the journey, we'll look back and see that every twist, every turn, and every detour was part of a beautiful plan that was designed specifically for us. So, if you're walking down an unexpected path today, don't be discouraged. Trust that God has a purpose in it. Even if you can't see it right now, let go of the need to understand every step and choose to trust that He is guiding you. Believe that each detour is drawing you closer to the purpose He has for your life, shaping you into the person He created you to be. Embrace the unexpected with faith and know that God is working all things together for your good. His ways are higher, His timing is perfect, and His plans will always lead you to a place of peace, fulfillment, and purpose. One of the hardest things for us to do as human beings is to let go of control. We often like to have everything mapped out with clear goals, timelines, and expectations for how our lives should unfold. But life has a way of reminding us that we're not always in control, and sometimes things don't go as planned. Unexpected challenges, setbacks, and detours come along, and in those moments it can be difficult to surrender our need to control every detail. But trusting God's ways means learning to let go and allowing Him to take the lead. When we release our need for control, we invite God's power, wisdom, and guidance into every area of our lives. Letting go of control doesn't mean we stop trying or that we no longer care. It means we're choosing to trust that God knows best and that His ways are higher than ours. When we cling too tightly to our own plans, we limit ourselves to what we think is possible. But when we open ourselves to God's plan, we allow Him to work in ways that go beyond our imagination. We're saying, God, I may not understand this right now, but I trust that You do. I trust that You have a purpose in this, even if I can't see it yet. Think about the story of Abraham in the Bible. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, yet he and his wife Sarah were childless for many years. Instead of waiting for God's timing, they tried to take matters into their own hands, resulting in heartbreak and difficulty. But once they released control, God fulfilled His promise in His perfect timing, and Sarah gave birth to Isaac. Their story teaches us that taking control can sometimes lead to unnecessary struggles, but when we surrender to God's timing, His plan unfolds in ways that are far greater than we could have imagined. Letting go of control also means accepting that we won't always understand God's ways. In Proverbs 3:5-6, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This verse reminds us that part of trusting God is letting go of the need to understand every detail. Faith isn't about having all the answers, it's about believing that God does, even when things don't make sense to us. Sometimes God will take us on a path that seems unfamiliar, one that doesn't look like what we envisioned. But those are the times when our faith has the opportunity to grow the most. When we let go and allow God to take control, we find peace in knowing that our lives are in His hands. We're no longer carrying the weight of trying to make everything happen on our own. We're no longer struggling to figure out every detail. Instead, we can rest in the assurance that God is working things out for our good. He sees the bigger picture, the parts of our story that we can't yet see, and He's guiding us towards something far greater than we could ever achieve on our own. Letting go of control also opens us up to God's blessings. When we hold too tightly to our own plans, we might miss out on the opportunities He's placing right in front of us. Imagine if you're holding a handful of sand. If you try to squeeze it tightly, it will slip through your fingers. But if you hold it with open hands, you can hold on to more. The same is true in our lives. When we let go and trust God, we open our hands to receive the blessings He has for us, blessings we might miss if we're too focused on controlling everything ourselves. Finally, releasing control allows us to experience freedom. When we trust God to guide our steps, we're free from the stress, worry, and anxiety that come from trying to manage everything ourselves. We no longer feel the need to have all the answers or to predict the future. Instead, we can live with a sense of peace and confidence, knowing that God's plan is perfect, even if it looks different from our own. The pressure lifts, and we're able to embrace each moment, trusting that He's leading us exactly where we need to go. So today, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the need to control every aspect of your life, I encourage you to take a step back and let God take the reins. Release your plans, your fears, and your doubts into His hands and trust that He has everything under control. He is a good and faithful God, and His ways are always for our best. Let go and allow Him to lead you to a place of peace, purpose, and abundance that only He can provide. Trusting God's control over our own is one of the greatest acts of faith, and it opens the door to a life that is far richer and fuller than anything we could create on our own. Faith often requires us to trust in things we can't see, understand, or predict. It challenges us to believe that God has a plan, even when we don't see how everything will work out. Sometimes we face situations that seem overwhelming or confusing, and in those moments, faith becomes essential. Trusting God's ways means having faith even when we don't fully understand the why behind our circumstances. True faith goes beyond what we can comprehend. It rests in the knowledge that God is in control, working everything together for our good and His purpose. There are times in life when we may feel lost, disappointed, or even hurt by the turns our journey has taken. We pray for answers, seek guidance, and still there seems to be no clear path. But faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting that God does, even when we don't. When we face difficult situations or find ourselves in the midst of challenges that seem insurmountable, our faith is often tested. It's in these moments that we are given the opportunity to deepen our trust in God, to lean into His promises, and to believe that He is orchestrating our lives with a purpose that is far greater than we could imagine. I think of the story of Job in the Bible. Job was a faithful man who loved and honored God, but he faced unimaginable hardship. He lost his wealth, his family, and his health. Job's friends told him to curse God, and even his wife questioned his faith. But through it all, Job trusted in God, even though he couldn't understand why he was suffering. In the end, God restored everything to Job, giving him twice as much as he had before. Job's story reminds us that even in the face of the most difficult challenges, there is a purpose behind our trials. We may not always see the full picture, but we can trust that God is with us, guiding us through and preparing something greater than we can comprehend. Faith beyond understanding also means being willing to let go of our need for control. Sometimes we want God to lay out the entire plan for us, step by step. We want to know every detail, every outcome, and every reason for the delays, detours, and hardships we encounter. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith means trusting that God's timing is perfect, that His ways are higher, and that He has already mapped out every step of our journey. Our role is not to understand everything, but to walk in obedience, believing that He will reveal what we need to know when we need to know it. There's a peace that comes from trusting God beyond our understanding. When we choose to release our worries, doubts, and fears into His hands, we are freed from the weight of trying to figure everything out on our own. Philippians 4:6-7 reminds us, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This peace doesn't come from knowing all the answers, it comes from trusting the one who does. When we trust God with our lives, we open ourselves up to a calm assurance that He is working all things for our good. Faith beyond understanding also calls us to have hope. Hope is the anchor of our soul, a reminder that no matter how dark the storm may seem, God's light is guiding us. Faith and hope go hand in hand. Hope gives us the strength to keep going, to persevere, and to believe that our current circumstances don't define the future God has for us. When we feel uncertain or afraid, hope reminds us that God has already written our story and it ends in victory. Think about the people in your own life who have faced difficult situations with unwavering faith. Their strength likely didn't come from understanding every detail. It came from trusting God's promises and believing in His goodness. They serve as examples that faith isn't about having clarity, it's about walking with courage, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. So, if you're facing a season of uncertainty, remember that faith is not about seeing the whole picture, but about trusting the one who sees it all. Let go of the need to understand every detail and lean into the peace that comes from knowing God is in control. He has a plan for your life, and even when things don't make sense, His purpose will always prevail. Keep walking in faith, knowing that God is with you, guiding you through the unknown and leading you toward His promises. In a world that moves quickly and values instant results, patience can feel like a challenge. Yet, when it comes to God's ways, patience isn't just a virtue, it's a vital part of the journey. Trusting God means being willing to wait on His timing, even when it seems to be taking longer than we expected. It's recognizing that while we may not see immediate results, there is growth, development, and transformation happening within us during the wait. Embracing patience in the process is about allowing God to work in His timing, shaping us and preparing us for the blessings He has in store. Patience isn't passive, it's an active faith that holds on to hope even when we don't see the finish line. Waiting can be uncomfortable, especially when we're eager to see progress or reach our goals. But God often uses these waiting periods to grow us in ways we couldn't otherwise experience. Patience teaches us resilience, endurance, and trust. It helps us develop the kind of faith that doesn't waver when things don't go according to our timeline. Instead, it roots us deeper in God's promises, giving us the strength to persevere. Take the story of Joseph as an example. As a young man, Joseph had big dreams, visions that one day he would be in a position of leadership. But instead of immediately realizing that dream, Joseph went through years of hardship. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. For years, it must have seemed like his dreams were slipping further away rather than coming closer. Yet throughout those difficult times, Joseph remained faithful and patient. He trusted that God was at work, even when his circumstances were tough. And in the end, Joseph was elevated to a position of power in Egypt, ultimately fulfilling the dreams God had given him and saving many lives in the process. Joseph's story teaches us that God's timing is often different from ours, but it's always right. What may look like a delay is actually part of God's perfect plan. During times of waiting, it's natural to feel frustration, doubt, or even impatience. But patience reminds us that we're not waiting alone. God is with us every step of the way. In Isaiah 40:31, it says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." This verse is a promise that God will give us the strength to endure if we place our hope in Him. Patience allows us to wait with purpose, knowing that God is building our character, strengthening our faith, and preparing us for the blessings that lie ahead. Patience in the process also teaches us humility. When we rush to make things happen on our own terms, we can miss out on the full blessings that God intends for us. Humility allows us to accept that we don't have all the answers and that God's ways are higher than ours. When we humble ourselves and surrender to His timing, we show a deep respect and trust for His wisdom. We acknowledge that His perspective is eternal, that He sees things we cannot see, and that His plan is ultimately for our good. It's important to remember that while we're waiting, God is working. Just because we don't see immediate results doesn't mean that progress isn't being made. Often, the most profound growth happens beneath the surface, where we can't yet see it. Just as seeds take time to sprout, there are parts of our lives that require time to develop fully. God may be working on our hearts, helping us grow in wisdom, or aligning the right people and circumstances to bring about His plan in our lives. Sometimes patience means trusting that closed doors and missed opportunities are part of God's protection. What may feel like a setback is often God steering us in a better direction. Trusting in His timing means believing that what He has in store is worth the wait, even if it looks different from what we imagine. Patience reminds us that God's purpose isn't just about the destination, but also about who we become along the way. The journey is just as important as the outcome, and God uses the process to prepare us for the blessings He's planned. Finally, embracing patience is about holding on to hope. When we wait with hope, we are actively trusting that God's promises are true and that He is faithful. Hope keeps our spirits lifted and our eyes fixed on the goodness of God. It encourages us to stay strong, knowing that He is with us and His timing is perfect. In a world that demands instant results, choosing to wait on God is a powerful act of faith and surrender. So if you're in a season of waiting, remember that God has not forgotten you. He's working behind the scenes, preparing you, guiding you, and aligning everything for His perfect purpose. Embrace patience in the process, trust His timing, and hold on to hope. What He has planned for you is far greater than anything you could achieve on your own. And when the time is right, you'll see the beauty and blessing of waiting on God's perfect timing. In every season of life, whether times of joy or moments of struggle, God is present with us. Recognizing His presence is essential to trusting His ways. Life brings different seasons, some filled with growth and progress, others marked by waiting or challenges. Each season, however, serves a purpose in God's plan for our lives, and in each one, He remains close, offering us His guidance, strength, and love. Trusting in God's ways means learning to see His hand in every circumstance and recognizing that He is with us, no matter what we're going through. Often, we expect to feel God's presence most clearly during times of blessing or celebration. It's easy to see His goodness when things are going well, when prayers are answered, or when we achieve our goals. But God's presence isn't confined to the good times. He's equally present in the challenges, the uncertainties, and even the painful moments of our lives. In fact, some of the greatest growth happens in those difficult seasons when we're reminded of our dependence on Him and our need for His strength. In those moments, He may be doing a deeper work within us, shaping our character, increasing our faith, and preparing us for what's ahead. The Bible tells us in Deuteronomy 31:6, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." This promise isn't just for times of peace, it's for every moment, even when we feel alone or overwhelmed. Recognizing God's presence in every season means believing this promise wholeheartedly. It means reminding ourselves that we are never alone, that He walks with us, and that His love is unchanging regardless of our circumstances. When we go through challenging times, we may question God's presence or wonder why He allows us to face certain trials. But these seasons can deepen our relationship with Him, drawing us closer as we lean on His strength. Sometimes God uses difficulties to refine us, to remove distractions, or to help us realign our priorities. It's in these refining moments that we can discover a closeness with God that we might not experience otherwise. As we seek His presence in our struggles, we come to understand that He is our true source of comfort, peace, and hope. Consider King David, who went through many highs and lows in his life. He experienced triumph, celebrated victories, but also endured deep sorrow, betrayal, and loss. Yet throughout all these seasons, David continually sought God's presence. In Psalm 23, David famously wrote, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." David's words remind us that even in life's darkest valleys, God is present, guiding us, comforting us, and bringing us through to the other side. David's life shows us that recognizing God's presence in every season strengthens our faith and allows us to face each day with courage and hope. Recognizing God's presence also means being thankful in every season. In 1 Thessalonians 5:18, it says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Gratitude shifts our perspective, helping us to see that there is something to be thankful for, even in the hardest times. When we thank God for His presence and for the lessons He's teaching us, we open our hearts to experience His peace. Gratitude doesn't ignore our struggles, rather. It acknowledges that God is with us through them. It reminds us that He is working all things together for our good, even when we don't fully understand the reasons. When we recognize God's presence in every season, we're also reminded that life is a journey. Each season has its role in shaping us into who God created us to be. The growth we experience during difficult seasons prepares us for the blessings to come. The joy of one season may give us strength to endure the next. By embracing each season and seeing it as part of God's design, we can walk through life with a deeper sense of purpose and trust. We understand that the same God who is with us in the sunlight is also with us in the storms, and He never changes. Finally, seeing God's presence in every season allows us to be a light to others. When we hold on to God's peace and presence, even in hard times, we become a testimony of His faithfulness to those around us. People are often inspired not by how we handle success, but by how we handle challenges with grace, faith, and resilience. When we trust in God's presence and recognize His hand in every part of our journey, we can be a source of hope and encouragement for others, showing them that God is with them as well in every season of their lives. So if you're going through a challenging season, remember that God hasn't abandoned you. He is right there working behind the scenes, and His presence is steady, comforting, and transformative. Take time to seek Him, to thank Him, and to rest in the assurance that He is with you. Every season has a purpose, and every moment is part of His plan. Embrace God's presence, trust His ways, and let Him guide you through each season of life with faith, hope, and strength.